Picture this, you show up at the gate, your bag has flown with you a dozen times before. Same size, same shape, same brand, nothing has changed. Except this time, the gate agent looks at it, pulls out a metal sizer, and tells you it does not fit. You are confused. Because it fit last year, it fit 6 months ago, it even fit on your last flight with a different airline. But this time, it does not. And now you are paying a fee, repacking in front of strangers, or checking a bag you never planned to check. This is happening to travelers every single day in 2026, and most of them have no idea why, because the rules did not just tighten, they quietly changed. Before we get into the 7 ways your bag can suddenly become illegal, hit subscribe here on FlySmart After 70, because we break down the confusing airline rules that never get explained clearly. And if you travel more than once a year, you are going to want to see this before your next trip. Number 1. Airlines quietly changed the rules without telling you. Here is what nobody wants to admit. Airlines did not send out a warning. There was no big announcement, no email, no push notification telling you your bag might not qualify anymore. Instead, the limits shrank quietly. A size that used to be standard across the industry started shrinking airline by airline, and travelers only found out the hard way, standing at the gate, watching their bag get tagged and sent below. And here is the part that stings the most. The bag was not damaged. It was not overstuffed. It simply no longer matched the new number on a laminated sizer that changed without warning. Airlines call this a policy update. Travelers call it a trap, because when the rule changes and nobody tells you, the burden falls entirely on you, not the airline. You are expected to already know. And if you do not, you pay the price, sometimes literally, in the form of a fee that can run over $100 at the gate. So the first lesson here is simple. Do not assume the size that worked before still works now. Because in 2026, that assumption is exactly what is catching people off guard. Number 2, wheels and handles now count toward the size limit. This is the detail that catches even experienced travelers. For years, people packed based on the main body of the bag, the fabric, the shell, the part that holds your clothes, wheels and handles were treated like an afterthought. Something that just sticks out a little, not something that actually counts. That thinking is now outdated because several airlines have started measuring the entire bag, wheels included, handles included, every protruding piece, and if that total pushes the bag even slightly past the limit, it gets flagged. Think about what that means. A bag that measures perfectly by its main body can still fail simply because the wheels add an extra inch, or the retractable handle housing bulges out just enough. Travelers are stunned when this happens, because visually, the bag looks compact. It looks like it should fit. But the sizer does not care what it looks like. It cares about the full measurement, corner to corner, wheel to handle. And here is the twist most people miss. Some bags that were marketed and sold as carry-on compliant were measured under older rules before wheels and handles were factored in. So the bag you bought specifically because it said carry-on approved on the label may already be outdated, and the only way to know for sure is to check it against the current limit, not the one printed on the tag when you bought it 2 or 3 years ago. Number 3, the soft bag trap airlines never explain. Soft-sided bags feel safer because they squish, they compress, you can push them into the overhead bin even when they look a little too big, and for a long time, that flexibility worked in your favor. Gate agents would eyeball a soft bag, see that it could be compressed, and wave it through, that leniency is disappearing fast because many airlines have moved to hard sizers, rigid metal or plastic frames that do not care whether your bag is soft or hard. If it does not slide through the frame without force, it fails. No exceptions, no pushing, no squeezing it in while the agent looks away. And here is where travelers get blindsided. A soft bag that has always worked suddenly does not. Not because the bag changed, but because the tool used to measure it changed. Gate agents used to trust their eyes. Now they trust the sizer, and a sizer does not negotiate. So if you are relying on the fact that your bag is soft and squishable as your backup plan, that backup plan is quietly disappearing. And the safest move now is to measure your bag at its fullest, most packed state, not empty, not half full, fully packed, the way it will actually look when you walk up to the gate. Number 4, basic economy does not always include a carry-on. This one surprises people who have flown the same airline for years because they assume the rules from last time still apply, but fare classes have changed, and basic economy on several major carriers now restricts you to a personal item only. No full-sized carry-on included. If you show up expecting to bring a roller bag and gate check it for free, you might instead be hit with an unexpected fee, sometimes charged right there at the gate at a much higher rate than if you had simply paid for the bag during booking. This is not a rare exception anymore. It is becoming standard practice across low-cost carriers and even some legacy airlines on their cheapest fares. And the tricky part is that the website does not always make this obvious during checkout. It gets buried in the fare details. So travelers book based on price, assume the bag is included because it always was before, and only discover the truth when they are already standing in line. The fix is simple but easy to forget. Check your fare class before you fly, not after, because once you are at the airport, your options are limited, and they are almost always more expensive. Number 5, these carry-on size changes could cost you real money. Let us talk numbers for a second, because this is where the abstract policy becomes very real, very fast. When a bag gets flagged at the gate on many airlines, you are not just moved to a checked bag quietly, you are charged for it. And gate pricing is almost always the most expensive tier available, sometimes reaching well over $100, sometimes close to $150, for a bag that would have cost a fraction of that if you had simply paid during booking weeks earlier. Airlines structure pricing this way on purpose. The earlier you commit, the cheaper it is. The later you wait, the more it costs. And the gate is the most expensive moment of all, because at that point, you have no leverage, you cannot walk away, you cannot shop around for a better price, you need to board, and the airline knows it, so the fee reflects that reality. This is why travelers who assumed their bag would fit are often the most frustrated, not just because they are paying, but because they are paying the highest possible price for something that could have been handled for far less if they had simply checked the policy a week earlier. And it does not stop at the fee itself, because a flagged bag at the gate also means a delay repacking essentials into a smaller personal item in front of other passengers, and the very real possibility of missing items you needed in the cabin, like medication, chargers, or anything else you were counting on having with you during the flight. Adding your carry-on during booking instead of waiting is one of the simplest ways to avoid this entirely, because the price locked in at booking is almost always the lowest price you will ever see for that same bag on that same flight. Number 6, the new carry-on size rules explained airline by airline. Let us go through this clearly, because the differences between airlines are bigger than most people realize. Starting with Ryanair, which has some of the smallest limits in the world, so small that many American travelers packing for a European trip are shocked when their normal domestic carry-on gets flagged the moment they try to board in Europe. Ryanair enforces its sizer aggressively, and paying at the gate is significantly more expensive than paying in advance. Then you have Frontier and Spirit, two carriers that have built much of their pricing model around bag fees. Their base fares look attractive, but the moment you add a carry-on, the price climbs, and it keeps climbing the closer you get to your flight date, meaning the cheapest time to add a bag is during initial booking, not at the airport, and definitely not at the gate. European airlines as a group tend to run smaller than their American counterparts, so a bag that easily clears TSA style limits domestically can still get rejected the moment you fly a European carrier. Even on a code share flight operated by a partner airline, this catches people off guard, because they assume one ticket means one set of rules, when in reality, the operating carrier is the one whose bag policy actually applies. US legacy carriers have generally kept their limits more stable, but even they have tightened enforcement, meaning the size limit on paper has not changed as much as how strictly it gets checked. Gate agents are simply saying yes less often than they used to. So on top of all this, several airlines have also started adjusting weight limits alongside size limits, which means a bag that technically fits inside the sizer can still get flagged if it feels too heavy when an agent lifts it into the overhead bin. This is especially common on European and budget carriers, where weight restrictions on cabin bags have existed for years, but are now being checked far more consistently than before. American travelers used to flying domestically often forget this entirely, because most major US carriers have never enforced a strict carry-on weight limit, so the habit of packing a bag as heavy as it can physically hold does not translate well once you are flying internationally. Add to that the fact that connecting flights sometimes involve two completely different airlines with two completely different policies, and you can see how a single itinerary might require you to satisfy several sets of rules in a single day of travel. The safest approach, regardless of which airline you are flying, is to stop assuming your bag qualifies and start checking the specific airline policy for that specific flight every single time. Number 7. Gate agents are enforcing carry-on rules more strictly. There is a reason this is happening now more than ever. Overhead bin space has become one of the most fought over resources on a modern flight, with more passengers boarding with rolling bags than bins can physically hold. Airlines lose money every time a flight gets delayed because passengers are shuffling bags, rechecking bags, or arguing at the gate. So the solution airlines landed on was simple. Enforce the size limit before boarding even starts. That means gate agents now have both the tools and the incentive to check bags they would have waved through in the past. Some airlines have even started rewarding or tracking enforcement, which means agents are less likely to make an exception just because you seem like a reasonable traveler. In the past, being polite, looking experienced, or simply being a repeat flyer sometimes bought you leniency. That leniency is fading because the system now runs on consistency, not personal judgment, and consistency means the sizer decides, not the agent's gut feeling. So walking up with confidence that your bag will pass because it always has before is no longer a safe assumption. The smarter approach is to remove the guesswork entirely before you ever reach the gate, because once boarding has started and the line is moving, there is very little room for a calm conversation. Agents are working under time pressure, trying to get the flight out on schedule, and a bag that needs to be measured, argued about, or repacked slows down everyone behind you, which is exactly the situation nobody wants to be the cause of. Arriving prepared is not just about avoiding a fee, it is about avoiding becoming the reason a flight leaves the gate late. Number 8. How to tell if your carry-on is too big before you fly. The good news is that you do not need to guess, and you do not need to find out the hard way. The simplest method is to measure your bag fully packed, not empty, because an empty bag can be deceiving. Once you add clothes, shoes, and toiletries, a soft-sided bag can expand by an inch or more in every direction. So pack it the way you actually plan to travel, then measure length, width, and depth, including wheels and handles. Compare that number against the specific airline you are flying, not a general industry standard, because, as we just covered, the numbers are not the same across carriers. A bag that says 22 by 14 by 9 on the label might have been accurate under an older standard, but plenty of travelers are discovering that this exact measurement no longer clears certain airlines once wheels and handles are factored in. If your bag is close to the limit, even by half an inch, treat that as a warning sign, because gate sizers do not offer half an inch of grace. They are rigid, and rigid means exact. Number 9, the DOT rule most travelers never use. Here is something most people do not know exists. The Department of Transportation requires airlines to clearly disclose their baggage fees and size restrictions before you complete a booking, which means the information is not hidden. It is simply not highlighted. Most travelers skip past it because it is buried in a link most people never click. But if you take 30 seconds during booking to actually check that disclosure, you can see exactly what your fare class includes, exactly what the size limit is for that specific airline, and exactly what the fee would be if you need to add a bag later. This single habit can save you from a fee that sometimes exceeds what a checked bag would have cost if you had just paid for it up front, and it gives you a clear paper trail if a gate agent ever tries to enforce something that contradicts what you were shown during booking. Most travelers never use this protection simply because they do not know it exists, and airlines are not exactly rushing to remind you. Number 10. What to do before your next flight. Start by picking your actual bag, the one you plan to use, and pack it exactly the way you would for a real trip. Then measure it, including wheels and handles. Then check the specific size policy for your specific airline, not a general rule you remember from years ago. Then check your fare class, because basic economy and similar budget fares increasingly do not include a full-sized carry-on at all, only a personal item. If you are flying a European carrier or a code-share flight, check the operating airline's policy specifically, since that is the one that actually applies at the gate. And if your bag is anywhere close to the limit, consider adding it during booking, rather than risking a much higher fee at the airport. These 5 minutes of preparation are the difference between walking through the gate with confidence and standing there while an agent tags your bag and sends it below the plane. Number 11. Your old carry-on bag could already be illegal. Here is a thought that makes most travelers uncomfortable. The bag sitting in your closet right now, the one you have used for years, The one with the airline tags still attached from your last 5 trips might already fail the exact rules we just walked through. Not because it broke, not because it changed shape, but because the standard around it moved while the bag stayed the same. This is the quiet part of the story that airlines never announce. They do not send a notice saying your bag purchased 3 years ago no longer qualifies. They simply update the sizer at the gate and let the bag speak for itself, which means the responsibility to check falls entirely on you. And most travelers do not think to check a bag they have successfully used dozens of times before. That is exactly why this catches so many people off guard. Familiarity feels like proof, but familiarity is not the same as compliance. The only way to know for certain is to physically test your bag against the current specific limit for your specific airline, not the memory of it working last time. Number 12. Why a perfectly legal bag can still be rejected. This might be the most frustrating part of the entire system, because it means doing everything right is still not a guarantee. You can measure your bag correctly, confirm it meets the stated limit, pack it carefully, and still have it rejected at the gate. How does that happen? It comes down to inconsistency between airlines, between individual gate agents, and even between airports. A bag that technically meets the published limit can still be judged too full, too bulky, or too close to the edge by an agent who is being cautious, because the flight is already tight on overhead space. In these moments, the printed rule and the real-world decision at the gate do not always match perfectly, and travelers are left holding a bag that was legal on paper, but rejected in practice. The lesson here is not to give up on measuring correctly. It is to build in a buffer. If your bag is right at the limit, treat it as a risk, not a guarantee. Because on a full flight, with limited bin space, agents are far more likely to be strict than generous, and there is no rule that requires them to give you the benefit of the doubt. Number 13. Avoid these new carry-on mistakes before you board. Let us bring this together into something you can actually use. The biggest mistake is trusting an old measurement instead of checking the current one. The second biggest mistake is assuming a soft bag will always compress its way through. The third is forgetting that wheels and handles are now part of the measurement. The fourth is booking basic economy without checking what is actually included. The fifth is assuming a code-share flight follows the ticketing airline's rules instead of the operating airline's rules. And the sixth, maybe the most costly one, is waiting until the gate to deal with a bag that is already too big. Instead of paying the lower fee during booking, every one of these mistakes is avoidable, and every one of them takes only a few minutes to prevent. The travelers who get caught off guard are almost never careless. They are simply working from outdated information, which is exactly why staying current on these changes matters more now than it ever has before. All of them quiet, all of them enforced, wheels and handles now count, soft bags no longer get a pass, basic economy does not guarantee a carry-on, European limits run smaller than domestic ones, gate agents are checking more closely than ever, and the size that worked last year is not guaranteed to work this year. None of this is designed to punish you. It is designed to keep boarding moving and bins from overflowing. But the system does not slow down to explain itself. It simply enforces the rule, whether you knew about it or not. So before your next flight, do not trust memory, trust measurement, check your bag, check your airline, check your fare. Take the 5 minutes now, because 5 minutes at home is always cheaper. and calmer than 5 minutes standing at a crowded gate with a line of passengers waiting behind you. And if this video helped you avoid a surprise fee, subscribe to Fly Smart after 70, because we will keep breaking down exactly what airlines change quietly so you never have to find out the hard way, standing at the gate, watching your bag get tagged.